the bottom of, all the way on the bottom of Ted Zion Amid Base, 16b4. But no problem.
16b4. Yeah.
Right. When you get there, I also want everybody to just put their finger on 17a2. In other words, in doing the Mishnah on 16b4, also have your finger on 17a2, on Yud Zayin Amid Aleph, number 2 in the art scroll.
The picture?
Yep, the picture. Exactly. Okay, so we're going to be flipping back and forth as we do this Mishnah to this picture. All right. So the previous Mishnah, back at the beginning of the parak, said the following: Shloisha Asa, there were 13, and now we're getting to Hishtachvos Haya B'Mikdash, bowing down, prostrations in the Beis Hamikdash, which correspond, as we're about to see with the Mishnah we're about to do, to the 13 different openings that were found around the Beis Hamikdash. And that is the reason why I want, the easiest way to do this is with the picture on 17a2. So here we go. Where were the bowing downs, the prostrations, that performed? Arba b'tzafay, 4 were performed on the north of the Azara, the temple's courtyard. The Arba b'darim, and 4 were done in the south. Shloisha b'mizrach, 3 in the east. V'shtayim b'marav, 2 in the west. Keneged, Shloisha asa sha'arim, performed opposite the 13 gates of the courtyard. So now go look at the picture on 17a2. As you can see, in the south, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 openings. Then in the north, there were 3 openings, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, where's the number 8 was through, as we're going to see, a compartment within the wall. And then we had the door known as the Nicanor door, which mounted to 3 doors. A main door from the Ezras Noshim into the regular Azara, which was number 9. Within that big door, number 9, was fashioned 2 doors, 2 smaller doors. Because those doors were so enormous, they made 2 entrances within the one big entrance of the thing. So as you see over here, they call them 9, 10, 11. Okay, and then there was 12, 13 in the back end, on the west, all the way in the west, behind the Kodesh HaKadosh. Those were the 13 different openings. Now, keeping your fingers over here, we can go back and forth as we go back to our Mishnah on 16b4. Says the Mishnah, the Roimim Samuchim Lamarav, the south gates beginning to the west were Shar HaElyon, the upper gate, that was number 1 in the picture. Called the upper gate because the Beis Hamikdash was built, as you know, on a mountain. The high point of this mountain, essentially, in pulling this together, was this door here on the southwest corner, door number 1. Next to it is the Shar HaDelek, moving eastward along the south wall, was the Shar HaDelek. There are many different explanations as to what this was, but the simple thing was, it was in essence the kindling gate. Let us say it was a place where they would stack wood to be needed for the Mizbeach, for the pyre of the Mizbeach. Door number 3, moving again eastward along the south wall. Door number 3 was the Shar HaBechoros, the gate of the firstborns. We're now on 16b5. Okay, and that is again in Maisa Bechoros. That's where the Bechorim were brought through. Shar Hamayim is gate number 4. That had to do with Sukkot, where we have the idea of Nisuch Hamayim, the water libations. Since that was close to the Mizbeach, as you can see, it was close to the Mizbeach HaChitzoin, the outside copper Mizbeach, and the water of the Sukkot, of the water libations, Nisuch Hamayim of Sukkot, took place by the Mizbeach. So now we've now covered all 4 openings in the southwest going towards east of the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Mishnah, "V'lomer nikra shemai Shar Hamayim." Why is it called the Shar Hamayim, the water gate? Sheboi machnisin seluchis, because through that door they would bring the flasks. And now we're on today's daf, Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, 17a1. Shel nisuch hamayim b'chag, the water libations on Sukkot. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, no. Boy hamayim mepachim v'asidim liyos yotzin mitachas mitman habayis. Through this door, the water will trickle, and it's designed liyosid lovai as a sign that Mashiach is coming, and Eliyahu, as nobody is coming, will trickle from there, from beneath the threshold of the house. The Gemara is going to talk about this extensively. But if you really want to see just a quick update on this one, look on the right column, the Rivon. The Rivon. It's the first, where normally the Rashi would be, above the Taklin Chalitin is the Rivon. The first line, Mayim mechatrin asidim liyos yotzin. It will come out, mi beis kodesh hakadosh, k'di isa biyuma perik basra, like we will see in major discussion in Masechtas Yuma, its last perik. Amar Rav Menachem mishum Rav Chana Sipuria, mi ein hayotzim mi beis kodesh hakadoshim, a brook, as it were, will start coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Betchila, Dumyan Lekarne Salam will be just like the antennas of a snail. Ad Shemagil Pesach Heichel, and Chiben Shemagil Pesach Heichel, Nasik and Chutshal Shetzi, becomes a little wider like the antennas of a locust. Ad Shemagil Pesach Ulam, and so on and so forth. It will continue to rush out, and the Gemara is going to go through this. That what exactly is going on. A good chunk of the Gemara that we're going to do today is going to have to do with this line of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.
Chuck, in reality, is this the water wells that start in Ir David at the bottom that comes up towards Robinson's Gate? Is that what we're dealing with?
No. In fact, I don't believe so. That one by Ir David is connected to the Gichain. Remember they said next to the Beis Hamikdash there was a stream called the Gichain, Nachal Gichain. That they say is more like that one exactly that you're talking about. It's coming up to the Robinson Gate from the city of David, from Ir David. But this is something that's going to be miraculous. Apparently, as we're going to see from the Gemara, there's going to be a trickle of water that's going to come out from the rock dome, from the rock that's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's going to trickle out, and as it trickles out, it's going to continue to widen and widen and widen until it becomes a raging river. You'll see it as we go through the Gemara. Okay, this is one of the famous signs, esoteric signs, spiritual signs coming from regarding the Yemais HaMashiach. So let's go a little further. The Mishnah then goes further. And again, have your finger again on the picture on the next page on 17a2. The Umasan Pitzafai, opposite the south gates are the north gates. Samuchim b'Marif, that also start in the northwest corner, moving east. There is Shar Yechanya, the gate of Yechanya, that's number 5, as it were, in the picture on 17A2, in the northwest corner. It's called Shar Yechanya because unfortunately that is where Yechanya, that is the gate by which Yechanya left to go into Golos, to go into exile to the Nebuchadnezzar, right before the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. The next one next to it is the Shar HaKarban, the gate of the offerings, since offerings, sacrificial offerings, by and large, must be offered in the north of the Beis Hamikdash. Shar HaNoshim, it's called the Shar HaNoshim. This is the gate that the women came through when they had to bring their kavanis and they wanted to do semicha, to lean on the animals, even though women do not have to do semicha, to lean, but if they want to, they're allowed to. And the next one next to it, number 8, which in the picture is a room-like thing, is Shar Hashir, the gate of the song, the place where the instruments for the Levium were put, and that's where they came out of. Why was the first gate in the northwest corner called the gate of Yechanya? Because through this gate, Yechanya exited the courtyard where he was when he went into Golos. When the Nebuchadnezzar came to get him, and Yechanya went ahead and he was said goodbye to the Rabbeinu Shalom. Take a look in the Taklin Chadatin, again the right column. See the Taklin Chadatin. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the beginning of the Taklin Chadatin. Sheba Yechanya Bigalusei. Shenichnas the Beis Hamikdash, because Yechanya came to the Beis Hamikdash. Shom lehipater melefnei hamelech malchei amlochim, to say goodbye to the Melech Malchei Amlochim, ulito rishus, and to ask permission. Kishalach b'goyla, when he went into Golos, v'yotze derech oiseh ashari, went out of that gate. So even though Nebuchadnezzar was obviously putting him into Golos, he came to bow one more time in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and apologized that he had to leave for Golos, and as it were, asking permission from the Rebbeinu Shalom that he was going into Golos. Very interesting, fascinating words. Says the remaining 5 gates, the Mizrach, in the east, that is between, in the picture again, between the Ezras Noshim and the regular Azara. The Mizrach Shar, here we go. In the Mizrach Shar Nicanor, the gate was the Nicanor gate. This is the famous story about Nicanor, who went to Alexandria to fashion great copper doors for this courtyard door, and on the way there was a storm and the sailors threw overboard one of the doors. Then they wanted to throw out over the board the second door, and Nicanor said no. He said, if you're going to throw the door, you're going to have to throw me over as well and drown me as well with the door. When that happened, miraculously the storm stopped, and when the ship arrived, in whichever port it arrived in Eretz Yisrael, a miracle happened that the door that was open, that had been thrown over, was floating along next to the ship, and so that both doors were retrieved, and these became the famous Nicanor, the Shar Nicanor. The Shnei Pishin Hayulai, and it had within the big door 2 minor doors. Echad b'yaminoi ve'echad b'smol, one to the right and one to the left. There's 2 ways of learning this. Like I said, they were with doors within the doors, one in the right-hand door and one in the left-hand door, or these were simply doors that were made right to the right of the big Nicanor gate and to the left of the Nicanor gate. But I like the answer much. To me, it seems more practice to say that it was a door within a door. And gates number 12 and 13 behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim did not have any name whatsoever. They were there, but they didn't have any name because they really didn't get used. They were almost like a fire escape behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but as you can see in their position, that they weren't used very often. Very good. We're up to the Gemara. And now we can move along. Masnis and Abba Yosef ben Yochanan. Our Mishnah reflects Abba Yosef. That the bowing down, the prostrations were connected the 8 to 13 openings in the Azara. The Ram Kirabanan, but according to the Rabbanan, Shiva Sharim Hayaba Azara. There were only 7 gates in the Azara. And since our Mishnah reads out 13 gates, it means it goes according to the Shita of Abba Yosef. Now we are on 1782, the page that we've had our finger on with the picture. Says the Gemara, Al Data de Rabbanon, in that case, according to the Rabbanon, that there were only 7 gates. Where did all the bowing downs happen? Because it was a W duet. Everybody agrees that there were 13 times, 13 places in which bowing down took place. But there are only 7 doors. For the Gemara, like we learned in the Mishnah Midas, in the time of the Chashmonaim, there were 13 breaches in the Sereg. The Sereg was a lattice fence that surrounded the space outside the walls of the Azara. And they had been broken into by the Assyrian Greeks, and they were breached 13 different times. Because they were breached by the Greek kings, the Assyrian Greek kings. And after, with the story of Hanukkah driving out the Greeks, the Chashmonaim fixed these up. And decreed 13 crustaceans opposite them. It should be pointed out that the number 13 is the gematria of the word echad. 1. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad. It also needs to be pointed out that ahava, love, aleph hey, beis hey, is also the gematria 13. 13 is obviously 13 midas of Rachman of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even more, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Zechus Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Oisiyos of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are exactly 13. 5 for Avram, 4 for Yitzchak, 4 for Yaakov is 13. Not only that, but Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah is the same thing. Sarah has 3, Rivka has 4, Rachel has 3, and Leah has 3, also equals 13. So the number 13 connotates for us both the Yechidus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the love, Echad B'Ahava, and the Zechus Avos and Imois. Which, by the way, if you ever have to give a speech for a bar mitzvah bacha at a bar mitzvah, this is a beautiful thing to say. That the first mitzvah that a bar mitzvah bacha has is when it becomes bar mitzvah in Ma'ariv, is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, being mekabel all malchus shemayim. And the next mitzvah that he has is V'yahavtes Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha b'chol miyadecha. And that corresponds, because Echad is 13, and Ahava is 13, and 13 and 13 is 26, which of course is the Shem Havaya, Yuv K, Vav K. And if you want to talk about the parents and all that, then you say Zechus Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Isis equals 13. And Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, the Isis equal again 13. And 13 is 26, which is the Shem Abai. Anyway.
We holding.
Daddy, we are holding on Yud Zayin Amid Aleph, 17A2. 17A2. We're about to go into the right-hand column.
Okay.
Now, we talked about before that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said that in the future, water will start trickling of the whole Beis Hamikdash and will slowly but surely widen into a raging river, and that will be one of the great signs that Mashiach is here, that Eliyahu Hanavi is here, and the third Beis Hamikdash is about to land. Says the pasuk. It's a pasuk describing, as the article would put it, the end of days. The end of days. Okay, this is famous psukim in Zechariah, the Navi Zechariah. And it will be on that day, Yatsu Mayim Chayim Yerushalayim, and live water, live spring water will issue from Yerushalayim. Tani, the Bryce taught like this: Mibeis Kodesh Hakadoshim Ara Paroiches Kani Selei V'Chilai, from the Kodesh Hakadoshim and the Holy of Holies until the curtain. And you look at the picture down on the bottom, that would be number A. Number A in the Heichal by Kodesh HaKadoshim. That is the curtain separating the Kodesh Kadoshim from the Heichal. The water will come out like a trickle of the sea lion, the kilai, which are snails, types of snails that are very thin. Mina Paroiches ad Mizbeach Hazov Kikani Chagobit, from the curtain until the golden Mizbeach, which is B. From A to B, it will strengthen. It will start becoming a little wider, like the locusts' antennas. Mimizbeach Hazov Arazoros Kichut Shel Shesi, from the Mizbeach, from B, Mizbeach Hazov, the golden Mizbeach, until the Azorah. That means out of the Ulam into the Azorah by the Beis HaMikdash, the butcher's place in the picture on the bottom. It will now start, it will grow, Kechut Shel Shesi. It will start widening to the thread of a warp, which is a little wider. From the courtyard until the threshold of the house, it will grow until the thread of the wolf, which is a wider. From that point on, it will widen until it becomes as broad as water issues from the mouth of a flash. So it keeps on widening out. We are now on 17A3. Yeah.
You remember? Where are you? Oh.
Yeah.
You remember about 3 years ago. About 3 years ago, there was a trickle of water that came out of the Kaisel Marovi.
Right, that is correct.
The people went, they really thought Mashiach was coming.
It was
like, and then they found out it was a broken pipe.
Right. So, which teaches us the great lesson: don't push the Zman.
Right.
This is what happened. This is how the false Mashiachs happen. In our desperation for the Gullus to end, we jump on every little thing. We hear that a red cow was born, a red calf is born. Everybody says Mashiach's here, and all that. Of course, when the signs will happen, then we'll know. Until then, even that, the Rambam says, even when the signs come and the Mashiach comes, we assume he's Mashiach only if all the wars in the world stop and the third Beis Hamikdash is built and there's no more Shibud Malchias and no other nation could control our behavior, then he becomes Mashiach B'vadai. Or as the Rambam says, even he can do all the miracles in the world. If he doesn't build the third Beis Hamikdash, and he doesn't bang all the armor into plowshares, and there isn't peace and tranquility in the world, right? And the ingathering of the exiles, and no more Sheba Malchus. He could do all the miracles in the world, but he ate Mashiach, right?
So,
That's that. So, Mashiach's got a lot of work in front of him. Ksiv, it says 17a3. The pasuk goes further. V'hine mayim mipachim min hakasei payimonis. And the water was trickling from the right side of the house. Kibitzei so ish kodim b'kab b'yodem b'yaman elef b'yama v'yavireni v'kamayim mi efsoyin. When the man left to the east with the measuring rod in his hand, he measured 1,000 amis and led me across the water, ankle water, ad karsula, until the ankles. Now it goes further. He took me another 1,000 amis and led me across the water knee high, ad until the knees. Another 1,000 amis led me, and it was all the way up to the midsection. Ad Masnaya, until the loins. Mikan ve'elech, from in her hundreds, because of the enormous size and the flow that became violent. It goes like this: Yomi elef nachal asher lo yuchla hava. He measured another 1,000 amis, and it became a river that I could not cross. Afilu, the Zechariah is saying this in his vision. Afilu levi ronin. Even a large ship would not be able to cross it. My tama, and it will be a place of wide rivers and channels that boats will not be able to traverse it. A mighty vessel will not be able to cross it. Why not? Because the waters will swell sachu waters.
violent water.
Like one who could try to swim against the current. The current will run so great that it will be impossible for a ship to stay stabilized on this water. Amar Rav Huna, the Asrin Koru L'Shaita Sechadnon. In our place, they call swimming Shachvana. Okay. Ufarash Yodot Bikirbai Kashe Yifaris Asayach L'Soches. And you see, the pasuk says, "Regard to Hashem destroying Moab, and He will stretch out with His hand." It means as a swimmer stretches out to swim, just like a swimmer picks up his arm to go swimming. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pick up his arm to smite Moab. Mahu lischais. What is the meaning of the word lischais? What does that word mean over there? Mahu sichais. In other words, the Gra says, what does it really mean? May sichais. What does it mean? Waters of sichais. All the Rabbi Yossi Bar Bun, the Rabbi Bun, the Yayit in the Smalim Ba'alma. It is the water which is spoken about in the entire world. That means either it will be such a phenomenon that the whole world will be on the internet immediately, and everybody will be reporting on this new river that just miraculously showed up in Israel, raging water that's running in Israel. Or it means that from this water, we will be merape, will be able to heal even people who are mute, as we're going to see in a minute. That this water will have the power to open up the mouths of the mute people. And that's why it says, it is water that through it, it's spoken about in the entire world. And we'll see this in a minute in the Gemara. Ksiv, the Pasuk says, Vayoymahu on that day, on that day, there will be a spring opening up for the house of David and the inhabitants of Yerushalayim, B'chatas and Penida. Jerry, there now, if we come back to what we said about 10 minutes ago. Number one, there was an Ir David that was separated from the old city of Yerushalayim. just like we have today. That the Ir David, and as Jerry pointed out, there is there. I have walked through that canal. There is water. There is a stream over there that is from the house from Ir David all the way from Ir David. Whoops! I'm sorry, everybody. I just knocked myself out. Hang on. Oh boy, one second. There, I'm back. Here we
I
go.
lost you.
Yeah, no. Here I am. Okay. Just give me a second. I just want to make sure everybody's there. Yep, everybody's there.
Yeah. It keeps flicking off. Why?
Yeah, that was me because the phone dropped. No.
But it keeps flicking off back and forth. Again now.
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know. Don't worry about it. As long as you can hear me, that's the most important thing. Ain't read Diamond.
I want to see you too.
Oh, thank you, Daddy. You're the best. Anyway, so this is again what Jerry was talking about, that there is a stream that was discovered in Ir David in Yerushalayim that goes all the way to the Robinson Gate. But this water that we're talking about over here, let's go talk about it.
I think that's the Shiloah.
The Shiloah, right? That really is from the Nachal Gichon. And
Right.
that is, like I said before, that was there before, in which they rediscovered. It's not this that we're talking about. Rabbi Yishmael Bar Nachman b'Shem Rabbi Yonason, mi Beis David mi Ad Yoishe Yerushalayim, 1784, in the span that went from Ir David to Yerushalayim, Kisherim l'nidu l'chatas. That water will be good for a nida and for the mechatas. The mechatas requires mayim chayim, living water from a spring, alive water, not gathered water. A nida is allowed to cover and gathered water, but the water that was used for the para aduma, the red heifer, in order to be metar somebody who was metama betuma space, right? That required mayim chayim. So this water between Yerushalayim and Ir David will be considered mayim chayim. After that, they will be considered mingled waters, a mixture of spring water and rainwater. Which will be okay for a nido, but not good for mechatas. Amar Rabbi Elazar, mi Beis David ad Yoishe Yerushalayim, kishem lenido lechatos. And for the chatos, means the mechatos, the water that is used to burn the ashes, to mix in the ashes of the paraduma. Mekam ve'elach, mekatafrisusem. They are waters of slopes. That means it's simply running down water, almost like water running down from the roof. And that's possible to everybody, not just the mechatos, but even a nido, because it's not considered gathered water. Mayim shuruvim.
No, because it's mixed with something else.
That was before. The one before, the Tanakhama says, "Mikam ve'elach mei taruve say," and that's kishkosha lenidu posel mechatos. Rabbi Elazar says no. That once we pass Ir David, it's not considered that. It's not considered tarubas.
So fact, what is it?
It's considered may called tafrisa.
Oh, because it comes on a slant.
In other words, it's running.
It's not gathered anymore.
It's not gathered, so it's not mayim chayim. It's not live water from a spring.
And it's not a mikveh either.
It's not mayim shuhuvim. It's not water that was gathered together. If you want to picture it in our world, it would be as if rain water was flowing off the roof of our houses. That water is no good. So, with regard to being turbulent, the Mishnah goes further. The Gemara goes further. And he said to me, these waters go out to the eastern Galilee. This is the Sea of Samchu. This actually exists today, except it's been drained. Look at number 43 in the article.
The Dead Sea.
What, Daddy?
The Dead Sea. No.
No, it's not the Dead Sea. Not the Dead Sea yet. Ze Yam Shel Samchu. 43. Look at number 43, everybody. The Sea of Samchu is a body of water known in ancient times as the Sea of the Samchaim, sometimes known as the Mei Miron. But more recently, it's known as Lake Hula or Hulya. And it's there. It's a lake that's about 10 kilometers north of the Sea of the Yam of Tiberia. And in recent times, most of it has been drained, and now it's a fraction of its size. But it's there. Says the Gemara further, the Yedu El Ha'arava, and they descend to the plain, Ze Yam Shel Tiberia. That is the Yam of Tiberia, the Yam Kinneret. That's the Kinneret, which today fluctuates between being very high and very low. And as we all know today, the Yam Kinneret and its offshoots, as we're paying attention to this Gemara, are a politically sensitive issue because of the water needs of the 3-4 nations that are, in essence, getting their water out of the Yam Kinneret. Ubaya Hayama, and come to the sea. Now, Daddy, we get to Ze Yam HaMelech. This is the Dead Sea, the Sea of Salt, the Dead Sea. And if you picture Eretz Yisrael, you realize we're going north to south. We're moving in a southward line, all the way to El Hayama HaMutsoyim, to the expanding sea. Ze Hayam HaGadol. This refers to the Great Sea. The Great Sea, most of the time, means the Mediterranean.
This
Oceanus means the waters of the world, including Oceanus, otherwise known as the Atlantic. But here we're really talking about the Atlantic as a whole, the Mediterranean pouring into the Atlantic. Why is it called the expanding sea? Referring to the 2 times that it overflowed its banks. In the beginning of history, in the Dar Enosh, that was the time when the world's population started turning from Hashem and dining Avodah Zarah. During the generation of after the flood of the dispersion. Rabbi Loza b'Shem Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Loza says in the name of Rabbi Chanina. Berishayna, the first time, Yotza ad Kalberia, the first time in the days of Enos, it overflowed until it reached Calabria,
Calabria.
But it's not the Calabria of today. This is literally on the boot of Italy. It is in Sicily. Calabria that is today is a little higher up, is not on the boot exactly of Sicily of Italy, which is similar, by the way, to Bnei Barak, where Rabbi Akiva was the Rav in Bnei Barak, is not exactly the Bnei Barak that we have today. And further, the Shnia Yotza Av Kepe Barbaria, the Barbary Coast. See, even then they called it the Barbary Coast. Okay, it overflowed until the Barbary Coast. No, that's the North Atlantic. It's the North Atlantic, Libya, so on and so forth. The north coast of Africa.
That's Somalia.
It's Somalia. It's really Barbary. Really, it's Tripoli, Libya, flowing down to the west of Mitzrayim. You should know that we dealt with the Barbary coast.
They still have pirates there today.
And in fact, Daddy, that Thomas Jefferson, the first distant battle that we fought was against the Barbary pirates in the early 1800s.
Right.
And that's what we were doing. We were dealing with Islamic terrorism for many years.
Still going on today.
And it's still going on today. Exactly. Not much has changed, including the names of all of these places. Those names are ancient names, and they continue to stay. Rav Acha b'Shem Rav Chanina. Rav Acha says in the name of Rav Chanina, Berishayna Yotza Atape Barbaria. The first time, no, by Dar Enosh, it went all the way to the Barbary coast. Ubishnia by the Dar Afloga, Bishnia Yotza at Akko Vad Yafo, until Akko and Yafo and Jaffa. Now it needs to be pointed out that Yafo is not Eretz Yisrael. Jaffa is Chutz La'aretz. Eretz Yisrael does not take up Jaffa. That's why it went all the way to Jaffa, but not further.
What happened during the Mabul? Wasn't also that the Mediterranean?
That was different. That wasn't the Mediterranean or the ocean overflowing. That was the Mayonis Hatachton Elyon. The entire spigots of the world became one huge geyser.
Opened up
completely. Not only was it a geyser, but says the Mabul, that the Mabul was hot water, was boiling water.
Boiling water.
The world boiled over. You may not remember, Daddy, but when I was younger and I was having a problem with carbon dating, you told me at the time that don't trust so much carbon dating because the Mabul changed everything. It boiled up the world. It aged things tremendously, and it changed everything. And during the Mabul is when the world broke apart, and Africa separated from Africa separated from Europe,
from Europe,
the United States. The land masses separated.
I'm so glad you listened to your father.
I tried to.
You didn't learn this in Torah Das.
No. Though the Malbim says it straight out. The Malbim says it was boiling water. It was boiling water. It changed the physics of the world. Period.
It did.
Right? But I'll tell you, this is one of the reasons why. And Charlie, I know that Charlie has got the book, The Great Partnership from Rabbi Sachs, Science, Religion, and the Search for Meaning, because a lot of the stuff that we didn't learn in Yeshiva Tarvidas, he tackles, and he tackles it well. It shows that it's all Yiddishkeit. It's all there. It's just that we didn't learn it, right? And so it's there. It's all there.
You know what else happened during that time?
Yeah, go ahead.
The axis of the Earth changed because it would change to 23 degrees, because that's when you started to get winter and summer and things like that. Before that, the axis was straight, so the weather was the same everywhere.
Did not know that. So the changes that we have now were affected by the Mabul as well.
That's right. The whole thing was changed.
The whole thing was changed. So therefore, as is usual the case, there's always more to the story. So we go further. So we said over here, Rav Acha b'Shem Rav Chanina b'Rishoyna Yotza Akape Barbaria. The first time it overflowed and reached the Barbary coast from Shnia by the Dara Flogi Yotza at Akabat Yopo, because it says, Ad Poi Tovoi Veloy Saisif. Until you hear, you shall reach and no further. Ad Akoi Tovoi Veloy Saisif. Until Akoi, the sea will reach but no further. Upoi Yoshis Bigoy Galecha. And here, so your waves flaunt their majesty. Ad Yopo Yoshis Goin Galecha. That means until Yafa shall I allow your waves to flaunt their majesty, but you're stopping at Yafa. It's well understood that this unbelievable spring that's going to come from the Kodesh HaKadoshim will reach the Great Sea, the Mediterranean, and the Yam HaMelech. Why? The Misakan. Because it has to render its waters sweet. Those waters right now are salty. The Mediterranean is salty, and the Yam HaMelech, of course, is salty. This spring is going to sweeten it up. Yama the Tveri, Yama the Samchu, but what do we care? The Galilee, right? The Galilee and the Yama and Samchu are already sweet. The water is good. It doesn't require desaltification. Says the Gemara, the rabbis to Gaza. to increase their fish, the ksiv bay lamina tia de gasa. To its species will be their fish. The mine tia de gasa. To a multitude of species will be their fish. Tanya, we learned
there's a bit of a drawback from this,
that
because right now the Dead Sea is a tourist spa where people can read by floating in the water because it's so salty.
right.
But once this water is going to sweeten and will lessen the salt content, you'll start sinking. So it's very bad for tourism.
So you got to figure that Mashiach probably doesn't like all those women in bikinis on the Yam HaMelech. So this is his very sweet way of taking care of the problem.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, the problem with tourism is, right, that you get overrun with tourism, right?
Okay.
And Yisrael is going to become a very, very highfalutin place to visit. It's going to be with a lot more trepidation coming
It'll be too religious.
It might become a little too religious, exactly. But we'll deal with it when we get there. Tani, Amir Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Ma'aser Shalachti L'Tzidon. I once went down to Tzidon v'Yubi ve'Eviu L'fnei Yosim Mishloish Meis Minei Dogim v'Samchu Yechad. And they served me more than 300 species of fish in a single platter. Now, I just want to make one little point. We shouldn't think that fishing rights aren't a big deal. Because in case you were paying attention to Brexit, you saw that one of the things holding up Brexit was the question of who has the rights to fishing in the North Atlantic around Scotland and Ireland and England, right? And that really comes up to works. So even to this day, it's a big, 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 big deal. Says the Gemara Vayta, "V'nipru amayim mitzeisam u'givo'om v'loy yerofu lemelach v'tanu." And the water will become sweetened, its swamps and its pools, and they will not become sweetened. They will be set aside for salt. So obviously the pasuk seems to be going in two different directions. One, it says it will be sweetened, the swamps and the pools. And then it says it will not be sweetened. Says the Gemara, first it says the water will be sweetened, and then it says it will not be sweetened. And for the Gemara, there's a place that's called that it will not be sweetened. Only the waters of that place will remain salty, so that salt will be produced there. But all other waters will be cured, will not with salt. So in other words, big enough to manufacture salt, not big enough to become a tourist attraction. There you go. The tzib, the owl, and the pasuk said, and it goes further. The al hanachal yala al sefosai, mizeu mizeh kolei tzmachul lo yibul oleyu v'lo yitoi pirya lechatoshav yivakeh. Along the streams it will rise on its bank. On this side and that, all types of fruit trees. Its leaf will not wither, nor will its fruit give out. By its months, l'chadoshav yivakeh. By its months will it issue new crops. From its waters emanate from the house. So its fruit will be for food and its leaf be healing. Tani, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Since in today's world, grain grows for 6 months. And the tree bears fruit every 12 months. 17A6. 17A6. But in the future, when Mashiach gets here, grain will grow in a single month. And trees will bear fruit every 2 months.
Even for trees that are not fruit trees,
not even fruit trees,
will also bear fruit
because they will become sweetened. They will all become sweetened. My tamo, L'chadoshav yivaker, by its month it will yield new crops. Months means 2 months. The grains which grow twice as fast
Right.
will be once a month, once every month. Amar Rabbi Yossi, l'fi sheboyno mazeh hatfua oisel shisha chadosh. V'ile oisel shnei masa chodesh. Avalos loboy hatfua oisel l'chamisha osiyot. Grain will grow every 15 days. V'ile oisel l'chodesh echad, and cheese will be approved every single month. Shekei matzinu she'osa hatfua b'mei yoyel l'chamisha osiyot. We find in the days of Yoel that the grain grew in 15 days. The current and they brought from them the Omer because there was no rain during the entire rainy season. And then, boom, it started raining the last 15 days, and miraculously the grain grew so that there was new grain to offer for the Omer. There was Chadosh to offer for the Omer. My top. What was the top? Uvnei Tzion Gilu v'Simchu b'Hashem Elokeichem Ki Nosan Lochem Es HaMoira L'Tzedoka V'Yored Lochem Geshem Moira U'Malkish Berishan. Children of Tzion, be glad and rejoice in Hashem your God, for He has given you a teacher for righteousness. It means a Navi, and He has brought down rain for you, the early rain and the late rain in the first month in Nisan. And right away, everything grew. In here, it answers up the question that the Rambam paskins in the times of Mashiach, nothing's going to change in the nature of the world except for Shibud Malchus Bavad. So how does he explain this? But the answer is, if by Yoyol, it happened that Hashem already put into the world this idea through this miracle that things will grow quickly within 15 days, once it's already in the world, right, then it's no longer a new thing. Since it's not a new thing, it's part of it's built into the world now, so it could be renewed at the time of Mashiach.
Yeah, by the way, Yitzhak,
Yeah.
I think this big prosperity that the Gemara is mentioning now,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the whole world. It's going to be only in Eretz Yisrael.
From this, it's only going to be anything that's touched by this water. By
Right.
this water that's coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that
Right.
is where it's
But
going to be.
you know why it cannot be the whole world?
Go
Because
ahead.
if this speed, the way it's growing, would be
Right.
all over the world, it would be, we wouldn't be able to handle it. There would be so much food, so much grain that we wouldn't know what to do with it. So it's going to be only in Eretz Yisrael. I think the next posuk shows this. Ubnei Tzion Gilu v'Simcha. The Bnei Tzion, meaning in
Right.
Eretz Yisrael.
Zion. And I think it's more than that. The whole idea is that we need to become completely self-sufficient.
Right.
That's the idea. Listen, in the end of the day, hatred gives us Shibud Malchus, puts the yoke of other nations on us. But the other reason for that is because we have to come on to them for economics.
Then they will have to come on to us.
Exactly. So the idea here is to make ourselves self-sufficient to the point. You know, it said, for an example, for years, they said Israel was the one land in the Middle East with no oil. But Hashem Yisbarach saw that electric cars were coming. And that oil was only going to run, the need for oil as black money, as liquid money, was going to fade away. And now look at the Israelis. Who's the Silicon Valley of the Middle East? Israel.
You can see it now with the Abraham Accords. Look at the Arabs now.
Right. They're scrambling.
Because they need us.
I know. And I saw two comments from people who are Arabs who are part of the Abraham Accords that are fighting against anti-Semitism. We must fight anti-Semitism.
Right.
Who would have thought the Moshiach must be coming close?
I actually think very much, again, I think you're exactly right, Charlie, because
it's not because they love us, it's because they need us. That's what
I know, that's what I'm saying. So
Right.
here we were all worried about the oil.
And
Right.
now, and within our own lifetime, all of us here, even me, who was a little child at the time of the early 1970s, the oil embargo, here we are about 50 years later, and all of a sudden, it's in the rear view mirror. Because today, who's the leader in desaltification? Who's the leader in gas? Who's the leader
Israel.
in technology? Exactly. And all of a sudden, they realize that there are billion people over there in the whole of the Middle East. Their whole system, economic system, over the next 20 years is going to collapse. Because
Right.
the reality,
Look what we showed the world during COVID.
yeah,
Right.
you're 100%
Israel's an example to the world.
Israel is coming out of it completely.
completely,
I know.
completely unbelievable.
Yeah, they opened up everything in the.
In fact,
in-
El Al is giving a major discount over the next 10 days if you buy tickets for all the Bachrim coming back to Eretz Yisrael. All the kids
Very
coming
nice.
back to Eretz
Right.
Yisrael. Yeah, and the reality is, and again, it's this Gemara here. You see it. Again, the Torah HaKadosh, I guess it's basically, let's talk about this for a second. If you want to know how the Torah works, if it wants to change behavior, it makes it economically viable or not viable. How do you know that the Torah is against slavery if it allows slavery? The answer is, why do we have slavery? Because it's cheap labor. So the Torah put in a whole bunch of laws that made it not cheap labor. If you have an eved, a Jewish eved has to be given a wife, has to be given a home. All the avodim get a day off every week, get off every Shabbos. Everybody has halachas like the women. A goyish slave, if you knock out his tooth, if you hit him and knock out his tooth, he goes free. He goes free. It's not cheap labor. It's actually very expensive labor to have a slave. So the Torah, by its economic reality of slaves, by definition, that's why slavery never became a big thing among the Jews. It was not cheap labor. It was cheaper to hire workers because they went home at night. They weren't your problem. You didn't need to feed them. You didn't need to buy them clothing. You didn't need to give them bedding. The whole business. And that's the same thing over here on the flip side. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make us economically secure and that the world will come onto us. And we're watching that nevuah come alive. We are watching the nevuah come alive. Further, I know it's 9:15, but if everybody can hang just for a little, let's get to the Mishnah on the days we'll only be in Amid off. Here we go. So it says like this: Uma Kayim. So break the Gemara. Uma Mekayim Rav Yosi lechadosha yivaker. What will Rav Yosi say with the months? If he says it's happening within every 15 days, v'chol chodesh v'chodesh here mivaker. That means in each and every month there'll be new crops. Every 15 days there'll be new crops. Ba'alu l'trufa, and it's leaves for healing. Rav Yochanan Amar terafe matzah salel. It has the capacity to serve as food for one who sucks its leaves. Uteraf mezoina, because the word teraf means food. Rav Shmuel chad Amar lahatir peh milamala. This means the leaves will have the power to open the upper mouth, i.e. a mute will be able to go ahead and now be able to talk. The leaf will have the power to open the lower mouth. Either for a woman who unfortunately cannot have children, her rechem will open up now, her womb will open, she'll be able to have children, or somebody who suffers from intestinal problems will be cured. Rav Chanina ben Rav Yeshua ben Levi chadom lahate per akaros. It means to open up the mouth of the akaros, of a woman who's barren. The chadom lahate per ilmin. It means to open the mouths of the mute, of a mute. We're now on 17a7, heading to Amud Beis, the Mishnah. And now once again, the Mishnah said there were there were 13 places in which you bowed down, corresponding to the various openings, like we saw in the picture on 17a b. Ulul Muslim B'Tzofan, and opposite the southern gates there was the north gates. And then the Gemara said that according to the Rabbanon, it's not the gates, it had to do with the breaches made in the Sarog, the lattice fence that was surrounding the Hazara, that was made by the Greeks, by Hanukkah, which was fixed up. Says the Gemara, since we're talking about that, let's talk about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, because we touched on it. You find that when the Nebuchadnezzar came to Eretz Yisrael, he stationed himself, he based himself on the outskirts of Antioch. And the great Sanhedrin came to greet him. Has the time come for this house, the Beis Hamikdash, to be destroyed? In other words, Nebuchadnezzar, have you come to destroy our Beis Hamikdash? He said to them, the one who I appointed to reign over you, hand him over to me. And I will go. So they came to Yochanan, Melech Yehuda. Nebuchadnezzar wants you. Even Sheshama mehem kach nofal mepatzchecha shel Beis Hamikdash. He took the keys of the Beis Hamikdash. All of the gage shel heichal, and went up to the roof of the heichal, the sanctuary. All of the fun of it, he said before him, Rebbeinu Shloim, Master of the world. In the past, we were faithful to you. And therefore your keys were given over to us, the keys to your house. Now that we are not faithful to you, your keys are hereby returned to you. Two Amoraim have a different, and now I'll argue on what happened next. He threw the keys up to heaven, and they have not yet come down. They have not come down, which means from here it says the second to last line in the Taklan Chadatin, Laharois Shemin Hashamayim Maskinim Alzeh. That in Hashamayim they agreed to it, because he threw it up and it's up there. The Chadoma the likeness of a hand emerged from heaven, which took the keys from his hand. It's as if they grabbed the keys from his hand. Says the Taklan Chadit in the last line, like he's saying, I don't want any more of your service. Give me back my keys. Now we just turned the page. We're on 17b1. 17b1. When all the noblemen of Yehuda saw this, they ascended to the rooftops and jumped off and died. They committed suicide. This is what it says. A prophecy about the valley of vision, Yerushalayim. What has happened to you now that you have all ascended to the rooftops? You who have been full of commotion, a tumultuous city, or an exuberant town, your slain are not victims of the sword, nor casualties of war, but instead they took their own
lives.
And this is where the Gemara, ends. This is where we're going to stop. There is another Gemara, but this is more in the second Beis Hamikdash, where the Kahanim, by the second Beis Hamikdash, saw the destruction were coming, and they threw the keys up in Hashemayim, and a hand came down and grabbed the keys, and then they called up to heaven, Ad Kama, for how long? And a voice, Pascal, came down from Hashemayim and said,
2 days.
2 days. A day by a Kadosh Baruch Hu is 1,000 years. So now that we're reaching the 2000th year of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, we can, without question, see the signs. Just like for the first time in 2,000 years, starting in 1990, there are more Jews in Eretz Yisrael than in Chutz La'aretz. That's a first. For 2,000 years, our forefathers all prayed for that. Next year in Yerushalayim, and in our lifetime, that Nebuah is coming true. The ingathering of the exiles is apace, is upon us. More than 50% of Jews are in Eretz Yisrael. And number two, as we just pointed out, Eretz Yisrael is becoming extraordinarily self-sufficient, and that it's going to be becoming a center of the world for many things. Very good. We are all up to Allah Kibbutz. We're in Abed off.